like to call the Finance Committee with a roll call vote, or not a roll call vote, a roll call. Who's here?
Matthew here.
King here.
Handy here.
Shepherd here.
Austin here.
All right, there's 5 of us here and 2 of us not.
Okay, and I'd like to open the CBC with a roll call vote.
Peg here.
Matthew here.
King here.
Shepherd here.
Austin here.
Next order is the minutes from our previous meeting. They were sent out a little late. Did everybody have an opportunity to review them?
Yes.
Yes.
Reviewed.
Are there any motions?
All motion to approve the minutes
Is there a second?
of April
Second.
9th as written.
Is there any discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Next one, discuss annual town meeting warrant articles. And I believe now we have 3 to talk about. Article 2, the Wachusett Regional School District, the additional firefighter, and a new letter that we had just received. We can also discuss under this agenda item. So, starting off with Wachusett Regional School District, I believe we were going to talk about a PowerPoint presentation and a handout, and Joe was going to send one out. And I'll turn it over to Joe.
And additionally, mention that we do want to have a double-sided handout. Mine isn't double-sided, but it would be good to have these reproduced and at the check-in table for everybody to pick up a copy so they can read the detail in addition to whatever conversation goes on about it. And I'd like to read it into the video here for the benefit of the taxpayers of the town that may happen to look at our video. Starts off, FinCom recommends a no vote on Article 2. First, we're not anti-school. FinCom is a strong advocate for quality education coupled with responsible school budgets. We are not taking issue with the compulsory MRC, transportation, or debt service increases for this year. Our issue is with the size of the discretionary increase, over 17% this year over last. The district budget increase of $5.7 million this year is in reality $7.1 million of permanent expense increases since the district enjoyed a passive benefit of a $1.4 million reduction in debt expense this year. In other words, the district converted those passive savings into recurring expenses. For additional perspective, Sterling already pays more per student than any other town in the district. And I'll hold up this colorful chart. Hopefully it can be seen on video. But it shows that Sterling is on a per student basis, on thousands of dollars per student basis, paying over $21,000 per student. The lowest town in the district is Rutland, and they're paying a little bit over $16,000 per student. So there's a large disparity between towns in the district. This is not an all or nothing situation. Each year, Sterling revenue increases about 0.8% due to property taxes associated with new growth and local revenue increases. When the 2.5% allowed levy growth from existing property is added in, Sterling sees a total revenue growth of about 3.3% year over year. If our town expenses grow at 3.3%, we remain on even keel with our excess levy capacity. If expenses grow more than this, our excess levy capacity erodes and pushes us toward a 2.5 override. This year, Sterling has done an excellent job of keeping municipal budget expense increases to 3.24% in line with expected revenue growth. The Monty year-over-year growth of 11% may appear large, but their entire budget is 1/13 of the WRSD budget, and none of their increase is discretionary. The Monty addition pushes our town expenses up to 3.8% year-over-year. The WRSD requested year-over-year increase is 4.5% overall and includes a discretionary increase of over 17% this year. This large percentage increase in a budget of over $13 million pushes our total town expenses up by 4.12%. FinCom is recommending a WRSD increase in the discretionary expenses of only 3.5% instead of their proposed 17+% increase. A WRSD discretionary increase limited to 3.5% will have the result of growing Sterling expenses by only 2.9%, which preserves our excess levy capacity. What is the impact if Sterling votes Article 2 down? Potentially nothing. You may still end up stuck with the WRSD proposed budget if no other towns also vote it down. If other towns in the district vote the school article down, a possibility exists that a budget will be returned to the district for reconsideration that is acceptable to all 5 towns. This is the outcome that FinCom requests. In summary, you have nothing to lose and much to gain by voting no. We would hope that also through their actions, the school district will also teach our kids an important lesson in fiscal responsibility. Ultimately, the decision rests in the hands of the taxpayers and the voters of Sterling, who must carefully weigh the benefits of this increased discretionary spending against potential implications of higher tax burden and the prospect of a future 2.5 override. FinCom asks for your no vote on this article. And the last chart highlights the discretionary increase, and it points to the fact that note the WRSD discretionary request is larger than the entire Sterling town budget increase. The town budget overall, when weighed against the entire municipal and school budgets, increasing by 1.57%, and the discretionary increase from request from WRSD is 1.59%.
Any comments? I have one. I find this last chart, I mentioned it on an email, to be extremely confusing. In the sense that the article is discussing the WRSD budget exclusively, and essentially we're talking about 4 parts. The minimum local, the minimum local contribution as dictated by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. The transportation budget, which is dictated by a contract that was signed a year ago. Debt service, which is a fixed expense, which was noted has dropped significantly. And last but not least, the discretionary spending, which is the bone of contention in this. My feeling is a chart just showing those 4 items with the DESI increase, the minimum local contribution, coming in, I think it was at 3.3%. The transportation this year actually went up just under 3%. The debt service actually dropped precipitously, and the percentage of the increase for the discretionary spending of 17%, you would have a pretty showy demonstration that is pretty much self-explanatory. My thoughts. It's been a long time since I did graphs, so.
I'll ask Paul to comment on that because he and I shared some visuals. So what do you think, Paul?
Well, I mean, the histograms that you put together, it doesn't demonstrate how big the spending differential is just because of the scale, depending on how the different ways you manipulate it. That's why I kind of felt like the table said everything it needed to say. The table that I put in the letter, I thought pretty much said everything that needed to be said without having to do a histogram. I mean, it would be nice to do a chart, but I think the table serves the purpose. So, again, it's how quick someone's coming in, right? This is someone is intended to read it who's walking into the meeting, right at the last minute. They're walking in, and you don't want 2 pages, you want 1 page, right? And we want to be able for them to easily digest. Look, this number is way out of whack. So what's the best way to do that? Sometimes the graphs are good ways, sometimes they're not. We talked about it, you did other charts as well, but you couldn't come up with a chart that really kind of made it stand out. So maybe a table is the best choice.
The problem with the table is that weighting on the debt reduction is overwhelming too. And it overshadows everything. And when you graph it, the debt reduction is huge, and it shrinks the discretionary piece up very significantly, so it doesn't show.
That's why I was saying not to graph it.
Yeah. This is the one that most dramatically shows where the increases are, George. That's why
I don't see it, Joe. I
Yes,
cannot follow
Move
this
to the other one.
for the life of me.
Move to the other one.
It does show it, but you have to, it takes time. You have to, it's not like, you need to look at it and it needs to stand out right away. Like
That's the way it looks now, George. So it encircles
Notice?
our area of concern, okay?
So,
Okay, but they're about 50% of our budget anyway, and it's a 2/100th of a percent difference.
But
I'm not sure.
the MRC, transportation, and debt is right there.
But they went up 4%, or 3%, not 0.54. What's the 0.54%?
The .54 is compared against the entire $28 million budget, George.
I have to agree with Paul. See, I know what we're talking about and I'm confused. And somebody walking into town meeting is, I don't know, that's my opinion.
I replied just to Joe, because I didn't want to make sure that I always worry about open meeting law. And I did suggest just 4 simple columns, one showing the
That's a number.
MRC number of 3%.
Yeah.
So just a 3%er, a transportation just under 3%, debt service negative, and then 17% discretionary.
I did that, but it doesn't show very good.
It certainly
I thought it did.
could. I think it
I
can.
did it too. I just
Yeah.
didn't know how to label
I think that
it.
is very confusing, particularly
Okay.
when you're in a gymnasium and people are seeing it for the very first time. Some of them are not going to have a clear view of the screen. I think a simple,
Well, I'm hoping they have a clear view of this sitting right in front of them.
But
but
I
they're not
don't-
going to have time to look at it.
Or understand it.
And to understand it, yeah.
I'm okay with that, but I'm just telling you, graphically, it doesn't show. So
And-
we'll just take this out and we'll put the table in.
Well, I'd also put in Paul's, on your letter,
yeah,
Yes.
which is just a description
Right.
Yes.
of the, right, and then plot that on a bar graph like this, and you have the 4 lines like Liz and I were suggesting,
I did.
and I did too. And then you have the backup that Paul has in a very simple table. And I think then people can look at it, and if it's addressed at town meeting, it's very simple to talk to. This isn't as simple to talk to, because I'm still confused about it.
Number one, charts and graphs scare most people. Figures scare most
I'll
people.
send you to
Graph school.
corporate training.
Been a long time, buddy. Anybody else? Mark?
I don't find the first 2 pages confusing at all. I think I like the narrative. The last graph is confusing.
That's the one we're discussing, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I do like the narrative.
So I will work on this with the rest of you, see whether we can show something visually, because people tend to be graphic. You don't tend to be table driven. That's why I'm trying to show it visually.
Yep.
Okay.
And so if the rest is good, I will focus on this piece at the end there.
And just remember, when you're commenting, when Joe sends out examples, don't comment to more than 2 other people at a time. Okay? Like if Joe sends something and says, Liz made a suggestion, don't comment to all. You can
Right.
comment back to Liz and Joe, or just not more than 3
I'll
people.
take the comment, I'll spin it back out to everybody.
And then
You
anybody can
Anybody
respond.
can respond to that. I will
Perfect.
show you some of the visuals that I've already looked at.
And then we'll talk about it at 6 o'clock on town meeting, at our meeting.
Okay.
All right, any other comments on,
Just kind of a warning, I did get some feedback from neighbors and things about, how did they get into trouble, why, like some of the things that came up in their presentation, like, the lack of funds for ADA type stuff, and the fact that they did hire 10 new people last year, those kind of things, there may be questions about that. I don't know, is that presentation that they made to us available on the town website?
Yeah.
they're going to make a presentation at town meeting, or
Oh,
they
they are.
historically have,
Oh, they have,
or they've been there also to answer any questions. So
just to have them address.
I would just suggest that any questions that come up pertaining to Article 2, let the administration respond first. And then if we have a counter argument, then I would suggest Joe can approach that second.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I agree.
So is there any more detail behind what you just said?
No, just that I was asked, well, will you be presenting those kind of things at the meeting so we know about them? And I said, well, Joe's doing the presentation. So I
He's
pushed
the
it
school
off on
guy.
her. He's the school
I
guy.
am not defending WRSD
Right,
at
right.
town meeting.
Yeah.
Not doing that.
No,
They can defend themselves.
Right. He was just wondering if the details behind how they got into trouble or what went wrong versus last year versus this year, why they need this big increase in discretionary, would we be bringing that to light? And we're not gonna redo their whole presentation at the town meetings.
If we had a foundation budget comparative to their,
For fiscal year '25?
wouldn't that be unique? Then we could find out where it all goes. But using 23s, you can really see what's happening. They've just overburdened themselves with personnel. Something Paul brought up 2 months ago, that you just keep throwing people at a problem, pretty soon it becomes so cumbersome. What are you sacrificing to do it? And when you look at the foundation budget, you're sacrificing technology, learning materials, and administration for leadership. So they've sacrificed all of that for just keep feeding teachers to a problem. And if you look at the MCAS scores, you look at F19 and today, after COVID, so there's a 4-year span, there has been no increase.
No.
It's really disillusioning, and
Spending money doesn't solve education problems.
no, education does.
Yes.
Okay, so any other thoughts on this? Then I'd like to move, before we go to the firefighter, we received a letter
Perhaps you should read it.
from Jim Gittens. Well, Joe, you're the school guy.
Do you wanna read it out loud?
But I am delegating tonight.
Oh, I see. All right, I'll read it. This is a letter from Jim Gittens, and apparently he had a citizen's petition otherwise known as Article 29, that will be appearing on the warrant at town meeting. The letter reads, "Dear Sterling Finance Committee members, I am the quote-unquote point of contact, POC, for Article 29 on the annual town meeting warrant. I had to file my contact info sheet together with the voter's petition for the article. That sheet is a public record now, so that means anyone can telephone or email me about it. I propose the following steps in order to counteract the select board. I will make a motion at the annual town meeting to take out of order and consider Article 29 immediately after the vote on Article 1. A person has already agreed to second that motion. Any voter can second that motion. Number 2, I promise the Finance Committee and everyone else that I will agree to a motion to amend and eliminate from Article 29 the following language, quote, and not 1 penny more, end quote, and substitute in its place, quote, and additionally, a discretionary contribution not to exceed 3.5% or $2,630,193, representing Sterling's share of the WRSD's total fiscal year 2025 requested excess costs as a portion to the town of Sterling based upon the October 1, 2023 WRSD student enrollment percentage of each member town, all in accordance with Section 4 of the amended Wachusett Regional School District Agreement, now in effect, end quote. If it is advanced by vote of those present at the annual town meeting, and will so say at the annual town meeting, if it is note, the Finance Committee should out loud voice support for those moves at the ATM. Number 3, if Article 29 is advanced and so amended, then we will, in essence, be back to what the Finance Committee proposed in its 2 draft warrant articles approach, subverted by the Select Board during the Select Board's 27 March 2024 meeting, period. I thank you for your consideration. Best regards, Jim Gettins. Any comments?
Interesting.
Any other discussion?
Is it in line with our position or not? I'm not sure it is.
I don't know what that $2 million signifies. I didn't have a chance to verify anything.
I know,
I didn't bring the school thing tonight.
I have the warrant.
Not the warrant,
No,
the
that one.
WRSD presentation.
Yeah, I didn't bring it
I
either.
brought the warrant. So I don't have an anchor to it.
Wasn't.
Assuming that number is correct, does anybody have any comments on it? Seems to reflect what we're talking about in Article 2.
Assuming the number's right, yeah, I kind of agree with you.
Well, we wanted it to be 2 separate articles, right?
Originally.
Originally it was, until,
But now it's boiled down to
To
one,
one.
Article 2. And if he moves Article 29 and it gets approved at town meeting to be advanced to after Article 1, that will become Article 2. Which is pretty much what we're suggesting on the current Article 2.
correct, on the current one.
Yeah.
But voting no, we're recommending voting no on the current Article 2. right?
Because what we want is
Is-
that.
We want this, right.
So he's
We-
actually coming up with a number
Yeah.
as opposed to just
Yeah.
declining
Right.
If we-
the
Correct.
presentation.
Right,
And this has been done in the past, historically. Finance Committee has recommended a lesser amount than what Wachusett has requested. I don't recall that the Finance Committee now has discussed whether that 3+% that Mr. Gettens recommended is something that the Finance Committee supports. As I recall, all previous discussions have been 0 for discretionary, or, and then, it's either or 17% or 0. I don't believe Finance Committee has discussed a 3%.
no,
Joe's
the
letter
letter-
is,
The letter says
the
it.
letter says that.
Okay, that's right,
In
all right.
essence, right?
All right, so then,
Is that 3.5, right?
No, it
Joe's-
says,
yeah,
the letter
discretionary
says,
increase.
given that the
Limited-
US CPI, all items 12 months.
Yeah, but your presentation
Yeah.
is 3.5.
yeah,
Yeah,
so then if you're saying that, then
Then this
that
ties in with
it ties
this.
in with that, yeah.
If
Yeah.
that number 2.6 million is
Okay.
correct.
yeah.
And I don't know
My
if it
number
is.
should have been 3.2, actually, in my. I
But now it's
So
3.5.
that number is correct.
It is?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
Did-
so
why,
if
did you have the
you're
school?
recommending what
did
he's
you have the school
recommending, then-
budget?
3.5% is on top of what that, on the letter, the table I had, it was 2,541,249.
Oh, okay.
It
24.
increased by 3.5%, and it is 2,630,190.
Perfect. Okay.
Yep, that's correct.
All right, so essentially that article, if moved ahead of the current Article 2, is essentially saying what the Finance Committee is recommending. Okay, so,
Yes. Originally, when it was a 2 article and we voted on it, we voted to support the previous Article 2, which was the MRC plus debt plus transportation. We all voted affirmatively
Correct.
on that, and we've all voted no on the discretionary piece when it was Article 3.
and this one is actually offering
Yeah,
a substitute
Yeah,
number.
correct.
So,
which we did in our letter, too.
Which
exactly.
we did in the letter.
And we're doing in the presentation.
Same
So
number.
it all ties together.
Yep.
So my question is, if this succeeds and becomes Article 2, what is the Finance Committee's position going to be? One of silence, one of support, or one of non-support? And then depending on that, what do we do with the new Article 3?
Well, I think I would follow what you did prior to the last special town meeting where we pulled together a meeting before the meeting. And we took a vote as a finance committee, I recollect, on that before it went to the floor. George.
Correct.
So I think then keeping with that, we probably should vote on whether we would support this or not.
Now, do you want to do that tonight, or you want to sit on it and think about it and mull it over for a week or two?
We should do it tonight.
You want to do it tonight?
I think we should. I
It's a
think
more
that,
public forum than
Well,
having
that's
it
true.
at 6 o'clock in the
Yes.
gymnasium.
Yep.
Yeah, the gymnasium, we had no
Oh, yeah.
video.
So the second question, before we vote, if we vote to support this, what are we going to do about the new Article 3 then? Because if you vote that down, I'm not sure the ramifications that then has on the new Article 2. If we're voting on Article 2, we're saying we support the WRSD budget at this number, pick a number, okay, $112 million. Article 3 is asking us to support a $121 million budget. So I guess we would be voting yes for the 118 million and no for the 121 million that's proposed?
Right,
Does that make sense?
yes, it does.
Okay,
We as a, I'll remind, in the warrant, we already voted on the existing Article 2 as a no,
correct.
a couple of times here.
Right.
Correct.
As a group, unanimously.
So it's not contradictory to say yes on the new Article 2 and no on the new Article 3.
Right.
They
We're on
are two
record.
separate dollar amount
Right.
proposals
We're already on record for that, so.
for the new Article 3 of saying no.
Exactly.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay.
So if the town supports the new Article 2, does it automatically mean they have to vote no on the Article 3?
Yes.
Well,
Probably,
if
they're
they vote
probably-
yay and yay on it, it's kind of moot.
I know.
No, but if they vote yay on 2, then probably they will vote nay
Nay.
on 3, particularly because Finance Committee said.
We would have to
Under
clarify
Yeah,
recommendation.
yeah.
that Article 2 is, and we should come up with an exact dollar amount, Paul, okay, for the new Article 2 in total, compared with the 121 million that the school has proposed. So we can actually say, if you vote yes on this, you're voting for, pick a number, 118 million versus the 121 million the school has presented. Okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Which was the spirit of the letter that you signed and sent to all the
Correct.
finance committee.
Now the question is, if it doesn't get moved forward, okay, and it stays as Article 29, then we're going to be dealing with Article 2.
After
And
you
then
vote
a
it.
long time later, we're going to be dealing with Article 29.
Probably an amended Article 29?
Possibly.
Or possibly not.
Exactly, so
Yeah.
there's a big contingency. It's easy if it wins and gets to number 2, because we've just made a nice, neat decision. If it doesn't move to number 2, we're still going to be in a no position on
Unless
2.
somebody amends Article
Then
20.
what-
They can make a motion to
Right, you
amend
can
Article 2.
go 2 ways. You can amend Article 2 to put in the discretionary amount that Mr. Gattens has stated. The other thing that you can do is change the narrative that Joe is going to present and say, we recommend that you support Article 29 in its amended version, which has been shared with us. So that as you're saying no on Article 2, you can say, there's an alternative, and it's Article 29, and it'll get us to what Finance Committee recommends, a discretionary spending budget that is decreased from the 17% to 3%.
You're right, Liz, because we have new info now
New,
to
yes.
deal with.
Yes,
I thought it was done.
just like me in the articles.
So,
Talk about confusion.
Yeah.
I know it.
Good point. Yeah, now we
Right, so
have this to consider.
if 29 doesn't move up, we've already voted on 2, okay? Now we should, we as a group have already decided it's a no on 2. The new,
Right.
the old
The
2.
old,
Yes,
But if the town votes yes on 2, what does that do to Article 29?
29 is going to
Makes
get
it
voted
mute.
it
down.
makes it moot.
It'll get voted down. If the town wants to support 17% discretionary, they're going to vote down.
Well,
3%.
because Maureen had an interesting comment when somebody asked that question when we were at the meeting. What if they vote yes on Article 2 and yes on Article 29?
Well, then-
That's a legal question.
Yeah.
We're not capable of
No.
answering.
Well, then Article 2 is a bigger number, so I would assume that they just voted for the bigger number, George.
Well, I don't know.
But you guys are assuming a lot of stuff. You're assuming that the same people will be there when Article 29 comes up.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of them are going to leave after Article 2
So it would be wise to keep it there.
at 29.
Yes.
This,
It'd be wise to what, Paul?
Keep it The
the 29.
29?
To keep people there, do you think?
No,
No,
they
no.
won't.
no, let him go.
They'll be,
They'll
be gone after the vote on two.
For Article 2.
Oh, okay.
And then 29 is the hangers-on, the folks that are committed to town meeting process.
And, yeah, all the other articles, yeah. So, all right, let's assume
So
it
then,
doesn't move, and they make their amendments, okay, to their Article 29. Are we going to support that regardless of where it falls in the warrant?
In order for me to do what Liz just suggested, put it in the write-up, we have to have an affirmative position on it.
Correct.
Because if we don't have an affirmative position, I can't put it in there, right?
Correct.
Now, what if we were to make an amendment to Article 2, the old Article 2, and come up with a new number, the 118 million versus the
The
121?
same thing that the
Article 29 is
is
doing.
proposing?
I would suspect that the same people that have been working with Mr. Gettens on Article 29.
Would support it.
And he already has the motion and the words and the people to second it. Those people would be very willing to make that change to Article 2. As I said at the last meeting 2 weeks ago, there will be people in the audience who will say either 0 discretionary or 3% discretionary. That's a given.
In that way, would also move it up to Article 2.
Article
Right.
2, exactly.
so if their attempt to move it fails, they can
Then
make that.
they will make the amendment on Article 2. With the exact same wording, with a 3% discretionary amount. And then get the town to vote on that one. It goes up or it goes down.
I think another point
Can't
that
predict it.
shouldn't be lost when we're talking about their budget, people are going to try to focus on you're cutting their discretionary budget, okay? They always use this. Well, we're not cutting anything. We're granting a 3.5% increase. You're not cutting anything. Nobody got anything.
Right.
It's a budget, for crying out loud. You spent X last year, we're saying spend X plus 3.5%.
Right.
And if you look at the whole thing, even DESI raised their budget by $2 million. And that all came from the towns. And then they threw in another $230,000 because of the hold harmless Chapter 70. So DESI forced everybody to throw another 2.3 million at it. We're telling them that we are in for 3.5% increase in discretionary, which is what, about another 700,000? What was it in '24? Discretionary.
The increase would be about 150,000.
It was 3.81% increase from 23 to 24.
And then in '24, the discretionary
Was
was 2.5 million, so it's another 700,000. So all in all, we're saying the school budget, with a declining population, we're happy giving them another $3 million. That's an increase, it's not cutting anything.
That's a good point. I'd throw in with the declining population too. Just, not get into the details of how much, but just,
10 years straight, by the way,
yeah.
for a decade, it has gone down. So, sorry, I wandered off.
Can you wander back?
Yeah, Article 2. We've already said no. Now the question is, do we actually want to pose an amendment to Article 2 to coincide with Mr. Gettin's Article 29 and sort of coalesce the whole thing?
Why wouldn't Mr. Gettens do that if he sees Article 29 going down for not moving forward? Why wouldn't he propose that for Article 2?
Because anybody can, right?
Anyone can.
I would suggest, since he's got the wording and everything, that he just go ahead and do that if it fails to move forward. Although you don't think you should move it forward. Strategically.
No, you actually get two bites at the apple if Paul is right.
If it fails, if you make the amendment and the amendment fails,
Which amendment, to move it forward?
no, so let's say that it fails to move forward,
Or,
an amendment is made to modify Article 2, and that also fails as an amendment, then at the end of the town meeting, if Article 29 is still sitting there, which it would be, because it failed to move forward,
do it again.
if you did it again, and you approved it at that time,
You would have already been overridden by the affirmative vote on Article 2.
I'm not convinced.
You're not convinced?
I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
This is a parliamentary procedures
I don't know
discussion.
either.
We don't have a
That's what an
solution here
attorney-
at finance.
No,
We
that's
don't
an
have-
attorney's question. I really don't know. You can have two conflicting articles that both win. I want to spend $10, I want to spend $20, what are you going to spend?
20.
I don't know.
School involved.
It'd be a shame if that would have to be litigated and we could never spend the money.
For 12 months. You're just stuck with last year's budget. And there goes $3 million additional dollars. So, all right.
How does this fit in with other towns voting yea or nay?
Well, Paxton is definitely going for a 2.5. They're just deciding whether it's $1 million or 1.4 million. And their finance committee wants to do $1 million because they think it has a chance of passing at that. And I think the select board is more in tune with 1.44 million. This was all in the landmark, by the way.
Yeah. What?
And Rutland did a 2.5 last year.
They haven't settled their warrant in Paxton yet.
And Princeton has now pushed off their town meeting, because apparently they're having some issues too. So they were all scheduled to have everything up and running, but now they're not. So they've canceled the public advisory board, advisory committee presentation.
Yeah, I just
to a-
saw that.
To a date unknown, and the town meeting's getting pushed back. So a lot of towns are in flux right now.
Now, people, if we amend, is that equivalent to a no vote as far as the 5 towns go?
No, we're one town among 5.
I know, but for our town, does that count as a no vote? You know how we need
It
2
counts-
no votes to
It
bounce
counts
it
as a no vote for us, but it doesn't affect the
Right.
other.
You mean
I
if we vote
understand.
for a 118 million?
Yes.
Instead of a 121 million? Yes, that is voting against their proposal and
Okay.
putting another proposal on the table. And where we are one of
For
the...
us alone.
For us alone.
And where we're one of the first town meetings, that might be a signal for other towns to possibly go the same route
Yeah.
and vote a yay for 118. Because remember, last time they were sent back to the drawing board, they came back and cut $170,000 from a $110 million budget, and it passed. I mean, that's a rounding error, okay? So don't expect any great things if they're not given specific guidance.
In
The other question
In a
I-
tight year, though, anything helps.
I don't know, 13% of $170,000 is 20 grand, you know what I'm saying? So,
Another question I had, if a town votes a 2.5 override, but the school budget has passed, does that, or I'm saying, let me say that again. If a 2.5 override fails to pass, but the school budget has already passed at town meeting, then does that
municipal-
2.5, that overage all have to come out of the municipal budget?
Yeah.
yeah, because if they pass the school budget, that's fixed in stone,
Okay.
yeah.
They have to figure their way through that.
There will be cuts.
So once the 2.5 fails, the budget has to be reduced, but it cannot
Yes.
affect the school budget.
Correct, because they passed that.
All right.
Fortunately, we're not at a 2.5 override
Yeah.
conundrum this year.
Yeah.
This year. if this gets baked into the operating costs, this and the debt service that went down, there's no money left for any debt service coming up. If they have to put an addition on the school or do the windows for 1.5 million in debt service, they just suck that. How much debt service was it, Joe? 1.9 million or something? That they're throwing into the operating?
1.3999.
Getting thrown into the operating budget?
It is.
It's awful, awful,
Right, they gobbled it right up.
yeah.
We
Plus-
bottled up ours too, right?
Yeah, we did. Which was equally awful.
They weren't supposed to learn from that
From us.
lesson, Lynn.
Yeah, that was a bad lesson. Okay, so, assuming nothing changes, we've already voted against it. The question is, do we want, as a group, to make an amendment to Article 2 suggesting a new budget number to vote on?
If
Versus
the
letting Jim do
failure-
it?
Well, I guess there are two conditions. The movement of 29 forward could fail, or it could pass, okay? We don't have to do anything to Article 2 if the movement occurs, right? Because it, in essence, what we would amend, okay?
Correct.
So is your question, if this fails to move up before, do we want to vote for the same amendment to Article?
A specific dollar amount,
Yeah.
because they proposed a specific dollar amount, okay, $121 million budget. Do we want to propose a specific dollar amount? And I guess we're only voting for our piece of that budget, not the
Correct.
entire, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Right.
so we're stuck with the MRC, the transportation, the debt service. Well, we're not necessarily stuck with the debt service. We don't have to give it back. That can be part of our consideration.
That's the sleeves out of my vest, George.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. So, all right, so do we want to make a proposition on a dollar amount?
Same amount that is in Mr. Gatton's letter.
I think it has to be aligned with what you signed and sent over to the other towns, right? I mean, I guess we could change that, but we already went kind of public with that, right? When
We
you
did.
sent that letter out.
Which is pretty much exactly what we have.
Exactly.
Yeah, I guess the question is, do we prefer to have Jim do it, or do we want to do it ourselves? If we're modifying Article 2.
Well, if Jim's going to make a recommendation or an amendment to Article 2, the current Article 2, somebody has to get in touch with Jim and suggest that instead of moving their article up, he should instead make an amendment to the current Article 2, saving for later, if Article 2 ends up passing as currently written, saving his amendment for his Article 29, like Paul says, in the wee hours of the morning, like our Congress does things, and then do it all over again. Okay? So, does anybody know, Jim?
Why are you making it so complicated? Why not just make the motion from the Finance Committee? That's what you want, that's what you make the motion on. That's how you amend it. Instead of playing go around, go around.
Well, Jim's going to go first.
Yes, and depending upon what happens with his, it may be a moot discussion. If his doesn't go, then you have a second bite of the apple with the new Article 3, and at that point in time, the Finance Committee makes the motion to amend it to what is in the letter, the discretionary amount.
Okay. That makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Bottom line, do we support an amendment like that, I guess is the question on the table.
Yeah, do we want to put dollars
Yes,
to our,
yeah. I think we as a finance committee should take a vote and a position on that.
do we want to put dollars on what we're saying,
Right.
okay? Or do we just want to
Use
say
dollars.
no to Article 2?
Yeah, I guess.
Well, that's only the discretionary part. We got to add in the fixed parts too, to come up with what is Sterling on the hook for in our estimation, in a fair analysis. So,
I agree with your point. If you don't have a suggested amount, that kind of leaves it open for them to,
do anything.
yeah.
Okay, so,
I think we should take the lead in Jim's letter for the amount there. And,
well, he's only talking the discretionary
Well, that's-
piece. We gotta add in no, because the budget's for the whole allocation to Sterling.
just to be consistent with the number he has in there, so it's not contradictory. So that discretionary on top of the no
MRC and the,
MRC.
yes,
Yes, that
Okay.
number, okay. I think that's the number we should support so that we don't create any more confusion around this.
Yeah.
Since I think you confirmed, right, that's the number, right, Paul?
Well, the number, the math is correct,
Yeah.
so I'm confirming. So, yeah, that represents a 3.5%. The letter that we sent was 3.2%. So they're not exactly the same number,
So what do we want to choose?
because it's all based on the CPI. So,
Which is now 3.5.
it was 3.2.
right, it was 3.2 at the end of February, it's now 3.5.
Now it's 3.5.
Yep. So
So-
that's why I'm all for contract negotiations that stipulate that you cannot exceed the US CPI. But that's how I used to write contracts, actually, a lot of them. So, but, you know, and same to George's point earlier, you know, when you talk about people on Social Security, they also use the CPI. They use a different CPI, and for a shorter time frame, only 3 months. But, you know what the CPI is going to be for the annual increase for people on Social Security for next year? What it's projected to be? 2.6%.
So the question before the finance committee
Good
is,
luck.
do you want to use the discretionary amount that is stated in the letter that went to the superintendent, or do you want to use a slightly higher discretionary amount that is stated in Mr. Gettin's letter? We all agree it's required minimum, transportation, debt service. Now, what discretionary amount do you want to use?
I support the 3.5 because the letter was tied to the inflation rate and it's now 3.5%.
So support Mr. Gettin's number.
Yeah,
Take a
just-
vote.
I don't want to get bagged by anybody saying the inflation rate is
Yeah,
not
no,
3.2%, it's 3.5%.
Just, you got two numbers you can work with.
Somebody second Liz's motion, I'll second.
I
it.
can't. I'm
Oh, you
I'm
can't.
finance. I'm
Okay.
not
I'll
finance.
make a motion that we be consistent with Jim Gettin's letter if we need to amend.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor? Any discussion?
Yeah,
Sorry.
At what point are we gonna do this? He's gonna get up there after Article 1 and close this.
Yes.
And that's when we're going to,
No, he's gonna propose moving 29 forward.
right.
And then,
We would let that run its course, however that turns out.
Right, and then whenever it's brought up, we're gonna agree with the 3.5.
Right.
Yeah,
so if
we
his,
wouldn't waste our breath if he moves it forward, right?
Right.
and other than he's asking us to out loud support the changes that he's proposing.
Yeah, we should vote on that as well, I would imagine,
Right.
right?
So
And
you have
that's
two.
what I hearken back to, when we had our special town meeting, we formed an opinion, right?
Yes.
To support or not support, so.
Okay, so right,
Do we support Jim Gettin's letter? And regardless of where Article 29 ends up, do we support the dollar amounts he's proposing? And will we support that verbally at town meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so regardless of where it falls, we're going to verbally support it. Now, Article 2, currently, do we support offering a contradictory dollar amount for the Sterling WRSD allocation, reflecting a 3.5% increase in the discretionary spending along with the MRC, the transportation allocation, and the debt service allocation? Are we going to present a specific dollar amount for Article 2 or just a no recommendation? Somebody want to make a motion?
Well, Shepherd and King had already done that, to similar words.
So
Okay,
we'll make, we'll
reiterate.
reiterate, yep.
So I think the motion was to modify Article 2 in the amounts of RMC, debt, and transportation in the amounts presented, as well as include the Getton's discretionary amount. So sum up those and modify Article 2 to the total of those amounts.
So that's going to be an amendment offered.
Correct, to Article 2, should it be needed.
We'll propose that amendment. Joe, will you write?
No, so Shepherd did it, and then King
No,
seconded
you
it.
did it, and I seconded it.
No, he proposed and you seconded supporting the Getton's letter. Should,
we all
once
affirmed
Article
that.
29 comes up. So that was a separate motion. The original motion that you proposed and that Joe seconded was to modify Article 2.
To amend.
To amend Article 2 to include a discretionary amount equal to the amount that's proposed in the Getton's letter, plus the other three items. So modify Article 2.
Amend.
Oh, God, I'm sorry. Amend Article 2 so that you
So you're asking me to write
decrease-
up the amendment?
No, Valerie's got, oh, for the meeting? Yeah, but you'll get it in Valerie's words before then.
So we have to take a vote.
Okay, the motion is to offer an amendment to Article 2. Offer an amendment.
Offer
What
an
motion are we talking about? How
Shepherd,
many motions have we done so far?
We're going to,
one has been agreed to.
I have one motion that, I have Lynn's motion that we want a specific dollar on what we are saying.
That one we didn't vote on.
what's the next one you
That's what we're
have?
talking about, but we
Yeah.
didn't vote on.
The
Go
one
to-
where Joe said so moved?
Wait a minute, go to the next one, Val. What
So
do you-
the other one I have is
That
a
was
motion to verbally support
Yes.
And that was.
Yeah, Article 29.
Article 29.
Yes.
Right,
That was
and that is
King and second by Shepherd.
and unanimous.
Yeah.
Regardless of where
So,
Article 29 is.
that's
occurring.
I have that as George Handy made that motion, no?
George Handy made the
Yeah,
motion,
he did.
or George proposed that I so moved, and Lynn seconded it.
Yeah, Joe moved the motion,
Okay.
and Lynn seconded it, and that's the Getting letter, Article
Right.
29. Now we're discussing the current Article 2
To amend it.
to make an amendment with a specific dollar amount represented by the MRC, the transportation allocation, the debt service allocation, and a 3.5% increase in the discretionary spending coincidental with the Getting letter. Do you have that, Val?
Yep.
Do you want me to repeat it?
And the only thing that I would add is for the WRSD, the debt and the transportation, those were the DESI.
But no,
Yeah.
there are 4 items: the MRC, transportation, debt service, and a 3.5% increase on discretionary spending from the FY '24 budget.
But the
Okay?
first three are they're not all DESI recommended?
No, the
No, just say-
MRC, transportation, and debt service, period.
Okay, I got it.
Okay, and then a 3.5% increase on the discretionary spending of $2,630,193,
Okay,
okay? And that will be to propose that amendment.
And when are we going to do that? Does it say?
When the article is opened.
Okay. Modify Article 29.
Okay, so
The vote.
that was a motion.
Yeah,
Is there a second?
King seconded it.
Okay. Any further discussion? Mark?
Okay, so we're gonna have this amendment that we've already said we're recommending no. So we're gonna amend it in such a way that you just described, then we're gonna approve it.
At a new dollar amount.
So we will then be approving Article 2, because it includes the discretionary.
The amendment is accepted,
Yeah.
the amendment, it gets approved.
Right.
They're going to vote on the amendment first. If that doesn't pass, we vote down Article 2.
Yeah.
Okay? Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. That's unanimous.
Another unanimous.
Okay, so, who's going to make the amendment for Article 2?
That could be
Or
something
offer
that we
the
discuss at
amendment.
the 6 o'clock, because at that point in time, you would have had enough time to gather up all of your numbers, and a homework assignment could be that,
Have a dollar amount.
have the dollar amount and have the wording, and then on Monday, May the 6th, at our 6 o'clock, all right, who wants to present this? But at least have all the wording all done.
Okay, makes sense. All right, well, that was easy. All right, we done with WRSD? Shall we move to firefighter?
Yes, okay, so I sent, Liz gave me feedback, I had originally included a little blurb about schools, but probably better to leave it out and not be inconsistent with any numbers that Joe has, so. So, my chart is pretty simple, our costs are growing faster than our revenue. And what I plan to say, and I kind of wrote this out because I kept changing things, was first I wanted to say that FinCom is not in favor of adding any new full-time position regardless of department, because our costs are growing faster than our revenue. Our 25 revenue forecast is forecasted to grow at $867K or 3.1%. FY26 is forecasted to grow a little less than that. Our costs are growing considerably at a considerably higher rate. Personnel costs are 2/3 of our town operating budget. The FY25 salary and wages, insurance and benefits are increasing at 5.4%. Without an additional firefighter, they're increasing at 6.54% with an additional firefighter. Municipal operations are labor intensive, and adding people drives other people-related costs. This is why we are required to present the cost impact of a new full-time position to be voted on as a separate warrant article and not allowed it to be buried within the municipal operating budget, which within the omnibus budget. Insurance and benefits can add 30% to the wages or salary of a new position, and the cost of this article does not include other people-related costs such as facilities, vehicles, equipment, training, and supplies, some of which drive capital spending and are not part of the omnibus budget, but do contribute to your overall tax burden. In recognition of these people-related costs, our town administrator and select board have initiated the transition of several full-time town positions to shared positions within neighboring townships. Community fire departments have a long history of sharing personnel and equipment resources with their mutual aid and call fire forces. In 2023, Sterling had 878 calls for mutual aid outside our town. Most of those calls, 91%, were for medical assistance. The Sterling Fire Department has an outstanding staff of firefighters. Everyone is a certified paramedic, as are 13 out of our 32-member call fire force. This certification is required to provide advanced life support, which may account for the large volume of calls for medical mutual aid to other communities. In the same year, Sterling placed 61 calls for mutual aid, all of which were for fire-related incidents. It's obvious that Sterling needs are well serviced by our town fire department. Unfortunately, our current cost versus revenue growth trend is like your smoke alarm going off. Adding new additional costs, especially with a history of that cost growing faster than our revenue, is like adding fuel to the fire. For fiscal ‑25, we are dangerously close to our levy limit. And without going into how that levy limit is calculated, we are posting a description of that on our FinCom page on the town website. Going above the limit requires a Proposition 2.5 override, which in turn requires a ballot vote by the town with a majority approval. If that's not approved, then you're looking at going back to budget cuts. All of those budget cuts will affect the omnibus budget, not the school budget, if the school budget has already passed. Fiscal '26 looks even tighter. As a result, FinCom does not support the approval of this article. Now, my question for you guys is, I added the stuff about the mutual aid because to me, the fact that we provide a lot of mutual aid out, but we don't ask for any mutual aid in, to me says we're servicing the town of Sterling fine, but we're adding resources to help other communities. To me, that's kind of a deciding factor in, a trade-off between increasing costs and increasing services. Without that, it's an emotional topic.
One comment. It's a very good point about 800-something calls for mutual aid and only 60 coming in. They're too far apart in your narration.
Okay.
You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
I
You
thought
gotta-
about that, yeah, put them closer together, yeah.
You got it. So then it has an impact.
Yep,
The other thing, you made mention of something very important, that the FinCom does not approve hiring any full-time employees. And I think that should be the second line.
any
under-
new full-time.
Right,
Any
okay.
additional.
I think that should be right under adding a full-time firefighter. We're not isolating the fire department.
Right,
It
right.
just happens to be a sound fiscal decision. You know what I'm saying? And right on your sheet.
Instead of saying why did the FinCom not approve, just say.
No, what I would do is
Change
just, no, not change it. Leave that line and then put, actually, the FinCom does not approve hiring any new full-time employees in any capacity.
You said that in your narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it should be highlighted up here.
So a question, Lynn,
This
are
must be
you
the
gonna
pen I gave you yesterday.
have a double-sided handout, Lynn? Because you said a lot. Okay.
I did, and I don't plan to hand it out. I think this is,
Let her
should be,
speak to it.
is
Yeah.
what goes up.
That's the visual, and she'll support it. Lynn, do you need a pen?
No, I got it. Is it too much data about first of all, do I go on too much about people-related costs?
A lot of words.
Yeah. So maybe it's
If
enough.
Some other department asking, it would have been a different set of facts supporting it.
Yeah,
The bottom line you're supporting is, we don't support any additions regardless of the department.
This just happens to be a
It
firefighter.
happened to
Right,
They drew the lucky straw.
yeah, and then if I go into the mutual aid, it kind of,
That's good, it emphasizes it.
but it's
Lack-
specific to the firefighter.
And it's a lack
But
of
it's-
need.
It's okay, yeah.
But I mean, it's the fire department. It is, it's the whole team, right?
Say that, it's so,
So the ambulance is part of the fire department,
absolutely.
right? So it's all the same, it's the same, you're saying the
Right.
same thing.
So how would you change it? Are you saying to change it?
Mm-mm.
No,
I'm saying to not change it.
don't change it. Okay.
We'll try to condense a little bit more, Lynn.
Yeah,
Just
so,
like Joe's gonna work on his verbiage, maybe condense a little bit more.
yeah,
Remember what we talked about, if you can keep somebody's attention for 1 minute, you're doing good. 2 minutes, you're stretching it. 3 minutes, you're out the door.
okay.
So
So
try
the
to time
important-
yourself too.
Yeah, so the important things are more, the mutual aid is important because it shows that we are getting services in the town.
And the fact that we're not supporting any new hires.
And the fact that we're not supporting any.
And I
Yeah,
think the other critical thing is, at the beginning, you talk about expenses going up, revenue not going up as quickly. I think that is the most powerful part, and that's the visual that they're going to be looking at while you're talking to the rest of this stuff.
Yeah, so that,
And I think you end with a nice little caveat of saying, and fiscal year '26 is not looking a whole lot better. So,
yeah. Do you think I should mention that our staff of firefighters are all certified, which may be the reason why
No, that's too many details.
too many
Yeah.
details?
That's too
Okay,
detailed.
yeah.
too specific.
all right.
And one thing to consider, if this school budget passes, that's even putting more strain.
Correct.
Oh, tremendous.
That's a good thing to comment on, is that.
But we're gonna know by the time this hits, what's going on with the schools.
Right, so at
So
that
you could
point I
be
can say.
impromptu at that
yeah,
point.
That if, yeah.
Now that the school budget passed, this is even a more
It's
severe.
gonna add another
Yes.
0.47% to our
Yeah.
town budget.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's kind of why I set the Concord, if you look at that.
it's
annual
so
town meeting
humbling,
form.
when every
But you
time I
just see
read
how
yours.
it actually, like here, you're talking about 1 and 2 years. They're talking about a 5-year projection. They're showing the revenues, they're showing the expenses, they're saying, same things we're saying.
right,
We're all in the same boat, all the towns.
yeah,
But they were very clear
Yes.
in stating it
Yeah.
and stating the concerns and taking that line.
And we're not?
I liked how they itemized some of the decisions that the town boards, the town administrator, the select board have to make decisions on their priorities
Right.
for the town. You
Yes.
know, I thought they clearly kind of outlined all those things.
They print every one of that's all printed out, and every single citizen gets a copy of that
I know, I think it's
before
wonderful.
they ever go to meetings.
I don't know if I could duplicate it for our town, but I think it was
You
wonderful.
could, I mean, basically it's a footprint. You pretty could.
Yeah.
Most of it is,
I think we should try at
Little
some point.
manipulation.
I would really like to
Yeah.
see us
This-
I'd
try.
like-
This committee made
I
a
will.
giant stride this year in the first time ever, pulling a revenue projection. We never did that before, ever. This is the first year. And not only a revenue projection for this year, we now have a 5-year guide on revenue. And as we've all discussed, this budgeting process, just like the schools, has always been expense driven, okay? This is what we gotta spend, how do we get the money? As opposed to revenue driven, this is the money we have, figure out how to run the town.
Right.
So we've taken a giant step in reversing this course, being a revenue-driven budget process. This is how much money we have. And then let the professionals figure out how to run their departments within the budgetary constraints set up by the revenue. 2.5 tells you how much you can spend. I mean, this is really easy budgeting. It's not like private enterprise where you gotta take a guess on what your sales force is gonna do next year. It's already predetermined. This is how much money you got 5 years from now. Okay, you know. So I think this committee has done an exceptional job this year, and next year it's going to tune into the expenses and try to bring those to a 5-year position, demanding our department heads come to grips with, we can't be flying by the seat of our pants anymore. This is real serious business. It's going to have serious tax impacts if we don't get this straightened away. So, yeah, not hiring any new people. We just looked at the school budget versus the foundation budget, and you saw where all the money is. They're overspending. DESE is made up of education professionals. That's all they do, is they look at all the departments, all the schools all over the state, and our state happens to have the best school systems in the country, and figure out how you should be allocating your resources to educate people. Now, most school systems spend more than the foundation budget, okay? Most of them do, overwhelming majority. Nothing wrong with that. But the proportion on where you spend it, the DESE people are pretty literate in how to educate kids. That's what they do for a living, just like our administration. But there's a real discrepancy there. And hopefully someday we'll get an answer as to why. I don't know why. But I think you've got a good handle on it, Lynn, here with the firefighter. We can't hire anybody right now. Next year's gonna be worse than this year. You got less money.
They're gonna love to hear that.
Yeah,
They want to hire 12 people?
so you think this year is tough? Wait till next year.
So is this how you're going to lead us in the direction next year, George?
No, George is not going to be doing that. So, any other comments on the firefighter?
Yeah, I have a comment, I'll direct it at Mark, since he was volunteered for the committee, I think. I think one of the discussions that should occur after, hearing Lynn talk about that, is with the addition of the new firefighter, if it's voted in, what new revenues is that addition going to bring into the department, tying it into George's revenue discussion here? Because it is a money-making
I think
center
that,
for us.
I honestly think, and this is just my opinion from.
It's 650,000 of our revenue source.
That's
I know it
ambulance,
is,
Joe.
and
Yeah,
you
but-
think it's going to increase.
Yeah, but how is this pitched?
Well, this is, I don't believe, first of all, let me say that when it comes to mutual aid, they used to get $300 per transport, not per call, per transport. So if they had a call and they went and the person was okay, or they did an epi shot or whatever, but they didn't transport them anyplace, they don't get anything. Now they've raised it to $350 a transport. When I asked Dave, does that pay for itself? He kind of said yes, but I personally don't think that it does, okay? Where they really get their money, where their income is when they do transport somebody to a hospital and there's a Medicaid or an insurance charge. That's where those funds come from. And he made a comment that he thought because our population was aging, that those funds may go, the amount of income they get from that may go down because Medicare doesn't pay as much as other insurance carriers do. And also because Bill came back to us and asked to extend what they're paying towards the ambulance, where they're paying us back to not do it in 2 years, but do it in 3 years. I believe he had a little extra in his ambulance fund to give us, but I don't think he does anymore. So now they want to extend out those other payments. I may be totally misinterpreting that,
There's
but
a half
in
a
the back
million
of my
in there.
mind.
There was a reserve of a half a
$500,000
million
bucks.
after the 650 comes
Oh,
out.
after the 650 comes out?
And
Okay.
that one is like no harm, no foul,
Yeah.
okay?
Uh-huh.
We can afford this spread out payment.
Okay, yeah, no, I know. I just thought, and that's, obviously that's not correct, that maybe they were tighter on how much they had coming in than we
It's just
thought.
going from one pocket to another.
To another pocket. But the question is, I know in your forecast, you had that increasing every year, and I was questioning whether
That's
it
what the
really.
projection is. I mean, Bill shared that
That
with
was,
us.
yeah, that was Bill's forecast.
Oh, that the ambulance
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Bill's-
contribution would be
yeah,
increasing every year?
He did the revenue forecast.
Yeah,
Okay, all right, so, I don't know, I didn't get that impression from Dave, that it would necessarily increase every year, but maybe he
Time will
was
tell.
being conservative on that.
Yeah, in the meeting, the committee that I was on, there was no discussion of the additional firefighting generating revenue. The crux of that meeting
There
was,
should be, Mark.
Huh?
That's what I'm proposing. There should be.
Right.
To the revenue side of it, we ought to have a more serious discussion about anything we do as a town, is it gonna help our revenue? And they have an opportunity in the fire and ambulance to make a difference on revenue. Very few departments do, but that's one that does.
by doing more mutual aid,
That's not for you and I to figure out.
right.
Where's the additional revenue?
That meeting talked, I came away with two things. They thought it was unsafe to have just one person there over the night shift. And we have all this equipment, we need people to use it.
I got a question, why don't they have two people over the night shift?
Yeah.
Just a question,
I don't know.
as opposed to two people in the day shift.
Well, I think that's something that the committee can be working on,
I mean,
discussing and,
yeah,
and asking.
Why don't
The
they split it
comments-
out differently?
Yeah, one of the comments was it's harder to get volunteers to come out at 2 in the morning than it is at 2 in the afternoon. So why don't you rely on the volunteers more during the day and the full-timers at night? I don't know. I don't run the department, but it was just a question I had.
Yeah.
You know. Anyway, back to Lynn's firefighter,
Yes,
or actually any personnel. Firefighter just happens, as Joe said, just happened to be the one in the pot this year, okay? So maybe that should be the lead-in, Joe.
Yeah.
The finance committee is opposed to hiring any new hires.
And that has been our position.
Yeah. And then the secondary part is, now we'll address Article, whatever it is, 5, the new firefighter. Okay? Maybe that should be the lead-in.
You should advise in your talk track or in your slide, that's a 0.5% increase in our budget. It is.
One body.
One body. At the 107K, that's at 0.5%. It's a little under 0.5%, but rough and tough, it averages out to
It's a
0.5%.
lot of money. 100 grand, and that's year one. Remember, there's a step every year. It's not the 3% COLA.
I kept thinking about the.
It's 7%.
the step
Yeah,
thing.
it's scary, isn't it?
Yeah, it is
When you look
scary.
at it. I know.
Because,
It's 7% increase for the first 3 years, a year.
yeah, on the one hand, you want to be competitive with other towns so you don't lose good people, but that's a big.
Sterling's very generous in
Yeah,
that regard.
you saw the one from Lunenburg, I sent their step schedule. Our starting pay is considerably higher than theirs, and their steps are 3% per year, ours is 4%. So, does anybody have any other comments on the firefighter?
Any other suggestions? I'll pass them back again.
All
I
right.
didn't get any feedback last time, but other than Liz.
So, we'll finish up this discussion, maybe Lynn can
Yeah, I
polish it
will,
up
yep.
a little, send it out.
I will.
Okay, next on the agenda, and we'll discuss it further at town meeting.
One request for Joe, when it comes, are you gonna put up slides for town meeting for your,
I was gonna do a handout.
you were gonna do a handout, so you weren't
I
gonna,
I want to discuss that tonight. Do we support having a double-sided handout?
Definitely, but I think
Yeah.
supporting it
And
with a
that's-
slide,
Yeah, that's fine, that can be secondary, but do we do the same for Lynn?
Absolutely.
I was gonna use this one slide, but could I request that you put it on your computer, because I don't have a laptop doesn't need to be plugged in.
So
town
whatever we're
meeting.
planning on presenting should go on one thumb drive, one laptop hooked up, so that we're not switching laptops and
Yeah.
holding up the
Yeah,
town
now
meeting.
maybe.
So if
for
you're
town-
going first,
Well, that's fraught for disaster, the whole IT thing,
Yeah,
I gotta tell you, okay? So I don't know whether the town is setting up anything.
So they will, because I assume that either Bill is going to be doing some kind of presentation, or the school district will be doing some kind of presentation. So if you're planning a PowerPoint and you're planning a PowerPoint, just bring it on a thumb drive, and whoever's got it,
okay, we should check with them though.
and check with Bill as
Joe,
to,
can you do this, Bill?
Yeah, I'll ask. them.
Thanks.
It sounds simple, but those are things that usually go wrong.
Wrong, I know.
All right, so, I think we've done that. Okay, the WRSD letter including all feedback. I got one piece of feedback, I think about a week and a half ago from Paxton, their chairman on the finance committee. I've had no feedback since. He also, well, he's a CPA, so he was caught up in the last minute income tax situation
I
too.
talked
so-
to them today for half an hour.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Okay.
They're coming up for the FinCom vote on their support or lack thereof on the WRSD on Thursday night. He informed me of that, so.
What's their position?
He believes that they have enough votes to vote nay on that. However, I will point out that they voted nay last year as well. And despite the nay vote from the FinCom last year and the affirmative vote from the select board in the warrant, it passed last year. So that's why I never get too optimistic about it going one way or the other, you
Yeah.
know, because, you know, we have some influence, but we don't have huge influence, okay, so,
And just remember, the select board is a elected position,
yeah.
so they're hard pressed sometimes to support anti-education stances. They rely on teacher votes.
You think they would mind being voted out?
Yeah, please.
so, has
Well,
any,
we can't find anybody to run against her.
I know.
so has any further thought been given to beginning, say, in September, contacting the finance heads of the other 4 towns and suggesting that the 5 finance chairs work together, and early enough in the Wachusett cycle of preparing their budget for the following fiscal year, so that it is more of a united stand? This has been done in the past.
That's a great idea, Liz.
Oh, I brought it up before, and I know you've been talking with Maureen about it, but
We were
I'm
actually gonna try
questioning,
that this year.
where's that going? Has there been any definite plans on that?
It has to be started early, as you're mentioning, because things take a lot longer than anybody imagines.
Well, yes, and that's why I'm asking it now.
Yeah,
Yeah, Holden issued their letter in December, so obviously they met on it prior to come
Yeah.
up. And their select board actually supported their position of 3.2%. So anyway, I think that's a good idea, but I don't want to stray from our agenda here. That's a good discussion for the first meeting after town meeting.
Okay.
Okay, the WRSD letter, including all feedback. Any other feedback? Anybody want to talk about it, the letter? Do we want to solicit other feedback from other towns? Or do we want to speak at town meeting and let the other towns hear what we have to say? Because we're one of the first.
We go first, and I think one other town.
Yeah,
Paxton's the same day.
yeah, 2 are on the 6th.
Yeah.
And Paxton's got their
Which
2.5.
is the other town?
Paxton.
Paxton must go the same day, then Rutland goes a few days later, and then Holden's towards the end of the month.
Action's on the same day, and they haven't gone to warrant publication.
Amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they can get things printed in a day like everybody else in the world. We take a month and a half. Okay, so is that it for the letter?
I think so.
All right, committee roles and responsibilities. Go.
So I just asked to put that on because it's one of those things where we talked about, we're coming towards the end of the meeting, the end of our cycle with the annual town meeting, so then just as we should talk about, because George sent out a note to everybody that you weren't gonna be part of the committee going forward, so makes sense for us to get something on the calendar to say how we're gonna look at those roles, and to kind of Liz was saying before too, I would agree that we talk about Wachusett, but I would like to see actually our chair people actually having more conversations with their counterparts. I mean, it's 50% of our budget. So, and it's not just Wachusett, it's the other schools. So why wouldn't we be having these conversations? Because we're all in the same boat and they're going to go through the same things, whether it's fire, DPW, and the other towns we should be sharing services with, right? So we should be having a deeper conversation around all those things, because maybe we can help, you know, even from a regional perspective, sharing those the other roles that we talked about. And that could be one way to do that. So that's why I asked to have that put on there.
Let me ask you, if we did something like that, if we wanted to get the finance committees together, and are you suggesting more than the finance committees? Like, would you include town administrators or?
Well, I would start with the
Finance chairs.
Chairs.
Just chairs.
Just the chairs, to just get the towns themselves, the chairs talking to each other. And then they're all gonna have their own thoughts on that process, and they can work through that, whoever those people are, about what makes the most sense.
And do you think it's better to do that after a summer break or before we disband for the?
I think it would be right at the beginning of the next cycle.
Yeah, we don't have to.
I don't think we'll have attention going into the summer, but like the first meeting instances after that, when everybody's getting back together and forming, I think that's a good way to kind of kick it off, that can be organized.
Because if you play it back, right, Holden sent out that letter, right, and they sent it to us. Would it have been nice if the chair people had all been talking to each other, and we could have formulated our letter sooner, and we could have sent a letter together, or the majority of people?
Right.
Yeah.
Because it took us 4 months
Yes.
to react to that letter and get our own letter out. That's an awfully long time. And Holden was probably sitting there going, what's going on with the other 4 towns? As a reminder, the finance committee must meet no later than 30 days after May 6th. And typically they would have 2 things that they would have to do. The finance committee would have to vote regarding their recommendation on the term renewal of any finance committee members whose term expires on 2024. George preempted that by choosing to resign, and I believe George is the only person on finance committee whose term is over in 2024. I haven't checked within the last couple of weeks, and I would depend on Lynn to do that, but I believe it was only George. Then the second thing for that agenda for that meeting before
I did my time.
June the 6th is the election of officers of finance and committee. And I think that would be a good time when that meeting is held to talk about what are some of the things that the 2 committees want to work on for the upcoming year. At least start to lay it out so that people can start to think about it over the summertime, or do whatever reading you choose to do. I remind you of the Massachusetts Finance Committee Handbook.
I know, there's a lot of stuff out there.
There's a lot of things out there.
All right,
Not
any
everything.
other thoughts on committee roles and responsibilities? Hearing none? Do I entertain a
So,
motion?
before we make a motion, when's our next meeting?
I was gonna say,
6 o'clock on May 6th.
Do we have a meeting posted now?
Not yet. Well, I will tomorrow.
okay, and at that meeting, will we decide on our date for our no later than June 6th meeting, or shall we
I
try?
would suggest we do it now.
But now,
I mean, that's a very short time frame. I don't know if we're gonna make a lot of conversation. I think that was my point of putting it on the agenda this meeting, so that we would go ahead and make that other
Okay.
appointment.
And shall we try to go for Tuesdays, because that seems to be, it's time for Christine. So we've got
That's a good idea.
Tuesday, the 14th, the 21st, 28th is after Memorial Day weekend.
The 14th?
And then you've
Flag
got,
Day?
and then you've got the 4th, June the 4th, that's it. So you've got May 14, 21, 28, and June 4.
21.
21? How's everybody feeling about May 21?
I can do it.
Oh, crap. I can't.
You can't.
Wait a second.
14th is okay for me too.
Oh, May 21 is good for me, yes.
It's good.
Yeah. How's everybody doing on May 21?
6:30,
6:30?
and then we're gonna have one more meeting after that, right? At least.
Well, we'll decide at May
that.
21.
Yeah,
Okay.
because May 21 will just be election of officers
You're ready to.
and setting a new financial year agenda.
Okay.
Any other business?
Yes. Well, we have a representative from the public, so we should ask that. But a thought that I had that I wanted to run by as new business, if we're going to do a handout, is it worthwhile for us to electronically send our handout to the other finance committees of the town on what we're going to talk about at the school level? I personally think it would be good because it becomes like social media to do that. And I would also ask that in that same spirit, that if we're going to have a handout to be presented at check-in at the town meeting, that we also post that to social media as well, to get as much exposure as you can ahead of time on things we're going to discuss.
I know nothing about social media, so I stand back.
Why couldn't we post it on the finance committee website?
That's an excellent suggestion. Okay.
I'm hot.
If anybody reads that, yes, that's an excellent suggestion. We
Do
can
it there
consider
too,
doing
but
that.
are you thinking that Sterling page there?
Yeah, Sterling Community page. The only
Sterling
problem,
community page that I don't have access to. Right?
that's fine.
Does everybody
worried
have
about
access
those
except
graphs.
me?
What is
I
it?
don't know, I asked for it and they said,
Is that next door?
No, it's Facebook.
No,
Facebook.
Facebook.
Oh,
Facebook.
So I've been
is
using
this Sterling Facebook?
Sterling Community.
Sterling
page on
community,
Facebook, yeah.
it's not Sterling official, it's somebody that's started
Really?
a while ago.
Yeah.
And then there's another one that Laura Ricci has.
So I would suggest if you want to go the social media route and go for the 5 towns on your notes, then you would want to probably use What You Chat, because that hits the larger towns in Facebook.
I don't even know what True Chat.
So I guess I'll be doing that.
Thank you. You'll have to send me a link to the Wachu Chat, I guess, so I can see what it is. So are we in favor of sending the handout on the WRSD to the other finance committees? That's what I want to bring to a vote here.
sure, I don't see any reason not.
Can I make a motion that after we all agree on the final content of that, that we forward that to the finance committees of the other 4 towns?
When are we going to agree on the final?
Content of that?
Well, remember, a finance committee audience is pretty financially oriented, so they may even understand the chart, George.
No. No, this guy doesn't, so. And I know what we're talking about.
Okay.
So, first of
So there's a
all,
motion on the floor to do that.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Uh,
Okay.
I guess as far as
It shall be.
since we're not meeting again until the town meeting, I guess I would say any feedback that you have either on mine or Joe's will have to come back directly to us, and then we'll have to use our discretion as to what's best at this point.
The process should be, whoever the author is, they get the input, no discussion about it. A new blast out to everybody of what the revised version of.
Okay,
If
yeah,
there are any additional one, they come into the author, a new blast out to
Okay.
everybody with no comments on it. Okay,
Right.
that's the protocol we should use on it.
sounds good to me.
How the hell do you find Sterling Community on Facebook?
You just look up Sterling,
Just look up
and
groups.
several pages will come up, Sterling. You have to be a member. And I've requested to be a member like 5 times, and the admin is non-responsive, so good luck, okay?
Liz knows how to do this. Val?
About the other brief meeting on Tuesday,
Nah.
regarding,
We're gonna meet, no,
no,
June 6th. We don't have anything to cover. Take us 10 minutes.
Well, we need the final on the presentation.
Everything's gonna be done beforehand.
Okay.
Val, did you end up posting that DLS thing on Prop 2.5 on our website?
No,
Or is that
not yet.
something you can do? Do you know how to do that? I wasn't sure whether, I know you post our agendas and everything. but
I do, and I do.
If there's a document that we want to go on the FinCom page of the website, is,
On the
Are you-
FinCom page of the
Yeah.
website? No,
Sterling Community.
I do not do that.
Community.
No.
Who could do
That
that,
website, I don't know.
Comma.
I've never accessed it.
Comet can do that. Great.
do that? And you were okay with it, are you okay
Oh,
with
yeah.
it, George?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think it's a great idea.
all right, I'll ask Comet to do that.
So we have 2 things to post to that. We have the DLS link, and we also want to post the handout.
You ever got a cream?
Now,
Eat more bananas.
should she be posting the link
It's a
versus the
potassium
the
deficit.
PDF?
What's that?
I have the PDF because I downloaded it. Should she be posting the link instead?
The PDF,
The
PDF, yeah.
All right. And you're gonna send her the other thing you want posted? Okay. And I think we should, would you be willing to, I know on the 6th, we're gonna decide on who's gonna make the motion to amend Article 2 if we need to, but can you do the verbiage on that as far as the amounts?
I can give it a shot,
Give it a
yes.
shot.
Send
I
it
think
out
you're
to
the
us.
best qualified to
Just
get
send
the
it out.
numbers right.
Whether it sticks or not, you know, my experience
know.
with this committee is, I'll take a shot at it, okay?
Okay. As long as we got something close that.
There you go, George.
All right.
Did you get me on?
You're pending.
Public
Okay.
session. Mr. Mackey.
I just caution you to make whatever you put into print as simple as possible. There's going to be an enormous amount of confusion in the audience between all of those changes. I don't know how you simplify it. If you can try to, in the verbiage, for example, that would be a place to start.
Yes, yes.
And whatever you project on the screen, should reflect the same thing.
And narrative that we're handing out, bullets.
Yes.
Bullets are good.
Simple as possible.
Yep, slush, concise bullets.
Do I hear a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Both committees.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.